Hello and welcome to Movie Buffs, a show where the action is the juice and where we live our lives a quarter mile at a time. I'm your host, Cisco from Misfit Minded. You can follow me on all the socials at Misfit_minded and my website, misfitminded.com.
And I'm your other host, Shani B. You can find me on all the socials at It's Me, Shani B.
Each week we take the red pill and use our certain set of skills to break down the best action films of all time. Today we're talking about the 2004 film, Dawn of the Dead.
A country in crisis.
Thousands of people attempt to flee the cities.
And one man doesn't have a clue.
Oh my God, she's so drunk.
Critics are calling Shaun of the Dead the perfect combination of humor.
Do something!
2 seconds. Hold it there.
And no holds barred horror. Shaun of the Dead. Rated R. Starts Friday at theaters everywhere.
Oh, man.
So good.
If you haven't seen this movie, what are you doing with your life at this point?
Get it together.
20 years old now. It's about the uneventful, aimless lives of a London electronics store salesman
Right?
and his lazy stoner drug dealer roommate, and their lives that are disrupted by the zombie apocalypse. So
inconvenient.
we did a Zombieland episode that sadly did not survive our recording. And so we thought, what better way to make up for it with another zombie comedy that has a big anniversary this year. So hopefully, fingers crossed, this one works out. So.
This one's sounding good. This one sounds much better.
Okay. To get this bullet train started, let's take the listeners back to September 24th, 2004. It was made for $4 million, pretty low budget, which is not a bad thing. We'll talk about it. And grossed a total of 31 million worldwide and 14 million in the US and Canada. So, pretty big hit. I do remember when this movie came out, like my dad was a huge fan of it. I just remember I remember hearing jokes from it before I even saw the movie kind of thing, because my dad's a huge zombie, Dawn of the Dead, all of those Romero films.
Yes.
And so we'll talk about it, but you clearly Edgar Wright and Simon Pegg and Nick Frost, like they love those movies too. So it's like a layered, you're getting layers of film appreciation basically.
Yes.
Which is really cool. And I think the fact that it's a British movie too is makes this even more interesting too, where it gives it another flavor. Whereas Zombieland, you got the US version, if you want.
Totally.
But I really do like the Shaun of the Dead version with its own slang, the pub.
Yep.
All this.
It's saying something more about kind of like society. Like it's also smart.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
So yeah, so this is obviously the US box office. I'm not sure how wide of a release it got. I'm
Probably
sure.
barely anything.
Yeah. So it might be unfair, but just to give you a look back at the time it was out.
And they do the re-releases, and I did double check, to see what the re-releases make. Yeah. And they're only always out for a weekend, but they still make over $1 million. So it's a lot of people show up when they get the chance to see this who might have missed it.
I've never seen this in a theater, but I told you before we started recording, I did teach it to my students. So that was very close. And I'll talk about that experience in a little bit.
Awesome.
It's really cool. But it opened at number 8 against The Forgotten. Don't even know what that is.
A terrible alien movie that had Julianne Moore in it. Shamelessly, I did see it.
I think I do remember that actually coming out. But yeah, maybe The Forgotten was a good title. Next, we have The First Daughter at
Katie
number
Holmes,
5.
let's go.
Don't know what that is either.
A movie that would never go to theaters today. That's what it was.
Yeah, streaming only.
Mm-hmm.
Sky Captain: The World of Tomorrow. I do remember that at number 2. Resident Evil Apocalypse at number 4. Do remember that one. And Wimbledon at number 7.
Little Cameron Crowe. Deep cut for you.
Okay. All right. Which brings us to our first segment called Getting the Band Back Together.
I don't have friends. I got family.
In this segment, we'll take a slow motion look at the filmmaking choices that went into the film and the ass kickers responsible. As we already kind of touched on, this movie was written by Simon Pegg and Edgar Wright, and it was directed by Edgar Wright. This is nice and early in both of their careers, which is just so fun to revisit.
It's not his first movie, but it's like his first movie with a budget. He did like one very small, like Western, like kind of like in Shaun of the Dead vein, like a Western parody kind of thing.
Okay.
For a very low budget, but this is like, pretty much what people will say is his first movie. It's regarded as his first movie.
Right. Yeah, definitely, an amazing beginning of like, the style that's all there. Cause I feel like, his style and the unique way he shoots things is still able to, he's able to capture that here, even with such a low budget. Like,
because it's such a low budget, like I feel like it's so insane that like just because you have a low budget doesn't mean you can't do cool shit. Like it drives me crazy. Like if you have a low budget, you're gonna shoot it boring too. Like make up for it in some way. You don't have big names. You don't have expensive sets and locations. You got to do something interesting and exciting and fun. And like I feel like when I watch, especially the Cornetto trilogy, which I have here, like when I watch these films, like that's what I get out of it. I'm like, he is doing everything he can in his power to make these entertaining without any of the like what people would say is a limitation. He's like, I'm gonna make this fun and different and cool, which we talked about with Quentin Tarantino a little bit too, right? Where it's like, with Pulp Fiction, which is gonna come out soon, here, but like how he wrote that, like, let me do this non-linear thing. That was a low budget movie too,
That's right.
In that one, he did have some star power to work with. And this one, I didn't know who Simon Pegg was. I have since gone back. They did a TV show together called Spaced, which is, if you like Shaun of the Dead, I highly recommend it. It's really fun. It's only like 2 seasons before it got canceled.
Bummer.
But I think I watched it on Hulu. One of those streamers had it.
Okay.
And just out of curiosity, and because I love Edgar Wright, I checked it out. Got a lot of the same faces in Shaun of the Dead in that show. Kind of the same storyline, I would say, with like Simon Pegg in his like 20s, kind of wandering around, not knowing what to do with his life, living with his roommates.
It's a very like early 2000s kind of dilemma that I think a lot of young people faced because, like obviously over here, we're kind of like dealing with the fallout of our 9/11 experience in the early 2000s, but we're still sort of like post 90s where everyone was like, it's the 90s, do whatever you want. And then it's sort of like, now we're just in this new millennium, but like, what are we supposed to do?
Yeah. And they're dealing with their own issues over there too, with like
of course
the Queen and there is no class, like Margaret Thatcher, like all that stuff.
Yes.
There's no such thing. But I thought why I bring up Space too is there's one episode in particular which like might have, I think he's on record saying like kind of inspired Shaun of the Dead, where it's really cool. Probably the most ambitious episode. They're playing video games. I can't remember if like they get stoned or they fall asleep, one of those two.
Okay.
And they wake up or like whatever in the video game world, and they're playing like Resident Evil or like a zombie game. So they're like shooting zombies and stuff. Like, and so you're getting a lot of the the first person POV shooting and stuff like that. In Shaun of the Dead, you're getting that. It's a good show. I think anyone in their 20s, I think it's like perfect show, like and sadly got canceled, which is a bummer, but
always the best shows always do.
But they got, I mean, the fact that it led to the Cornetto trilogy, I think so fun. I love all of them, pretty much.
Yep.
If I had to pick a favorite, this might be because we're movie buffs and we do action movies, it might be Hot Fuzz. I really love that one.
I really love Hot Fuzz. Yeah.
But to talk kind of about like me teaching Shaun of the Dead, that kind of has risen for me too after that experience, which I thought was so fun.
And there is a lot of action here for it being, a kind of comedy. There is a surprising amount of action. And again, with the low budget, like I definitely was not thinking, oh, this is such a low budget. Because even by today's standard, it would still only be 7 million, still less than Sydney Sweeney's Immaculate, and
Yeah.
nowhere near as many stunts.
Yeah. No, it was like, and it was, I think I only did it for one semester, right? Where I
Okay.
think this is my last semester. I kind of was like, I kind of want to shake it up, like there's a kind of an empty period. What's a movie that most of them wouldn't have seen? I'm teaching freshmen in college
Right.
and fits the theme of like I was teaching mostly like horror films and stuff like that.
Of course.
And so I picked Shaun of the Dead. I don't think anyone had seen it, maybe one person or something. And it
It's
ended up
awesome.
being like most of them their favorite film, I would say, which was like, again, I never go into it knowing what the Zoomers are going to like or not like.
Seriously.
But they seem to really respond to it, which I was really happy about. And some of the things we kind of looked at it through, like, in terms of like academic, analysis, things like that.
Yeah,
Um,
social stuff.
this was called by one writer. I wish I had the article, but I do remember the term. This was labeled as the first Zom rom-com.
Yes,
Zombie rom-com.
fantastic. Okay.
So we kind of looked at it through that angle, and he made some good points about how they blend the genres and like, is this a horror movie trapped in a rom-com or a rom-com trapped in a horror movie? Who is the I thought after reading it, like, and watching it this time, it's kind of fun to like, what is the main romantic relationship? Is it between, Shaun and his girlfriend, or is it between him and his best friend?
Right.
Because, if you're saying like, "Oh, that's ridiculous, it's just between Shaun and his friend," Ed, well, Ed survives at the end, and they still maintain a relationship, which usually in a rom-com, you know, if there's a problem between a boyfriend, a girlfriend, or whatever, the main couple, that's resolved, whatever they break, whatever they had to deal with, and then they come together, and
They
that's it.
reconcile.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But there's never really a third party that lasts at the end. You know what I mean? So it is
Yeah.
interesting to think about some of these. That's kind of what we learned about. So
It's
yeah.
interesting to think about the dilemma of that stage of life, right? Like a big part of, moving from young adulthood into adulthood is, making the prioritization choice of who your partner is going to be, because they're going to become a best friend of yours as well in many ways. And, especially when we're like in our teens and 20s, there's usually a fair amount of competition between like our best friend and our partners
Right.
sometimes. And this movie is also like kind of confronting that, where it's sort of like, he of course loves this girl, but he also loves his friend, and he is trying to reconcile, how do I have a best friend and also, grow and change and evolve to prioritize this woman in my life as well.
It was
And that
really
is interesting.
I remember too, there was one part of the essay where he talks about, like, because obviously like the camera work is something Edgar Wright's known for. And
Absolutely.
there's kind of like a rom-com trope, which I liked teaching this stuff because I'm not huge into rom-com, so I was learning all this information on the fly.
Totally.
But he referenced like Notting Hill. I guess there's a scene with like Hugh Grant, and he's pitching something to like his entire office, but you don't know, like, the people are all like, everyone is in the office. You know what I mean? Like
When
that
he's
scene.
doing it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So then like, and then he contrasts that to the beginning of this movie where they're having the fight. They're having the fight, right? And she's like, Ed, it's not that I don't like you. And then it pans to Ed, and he's in the corner.
He's there. Yeah, he's there hearing it. Mm-hmm.
Same thing with her friends are there too, and he's just like, it's not that I don't like you guys, and so it's like all this commentary about that, which I thought it really made me look at Shaun of the Dead differently, which I think is a good essay, because like I never really I was just approaching it from a horror standpoint,
right?
Which you can just watch it from that perspective. There's plenty of references, I'm coming to get you, Barbara, those type of lines, or homages to that. But I thought that was like, this is a rom-com. It is a straight up rom-com. There's a problem in their relationship, and even though there's all this horror zombie shit happening in the middle of it, the main thing is he wants to reconcile with Liz and get back with her.
Yes, and it's also complex too because it is also a very successful family drama as well, right? Like what's happening with him and his family as he like again, this is such an interesting movie because it's about like developmental life phases in so many ways, right? Becoming a real adult, accepting, your childhood and letting it rest as it was.
That's like one of my favorite that's one of my favorite lines in it when I forget what's the guy they live with, his name? I can't remember.
Oh, Serafinowicz, Peter.
Yeah, Peter, and he's like, remember that one night we stayed up like until 4 a.m. drunk playing Tekken, and he's like, oh yeah, when was that? He goes, 5 years ago.
It was 5 years ago.
Yeah. And it's just like, man, that's how fast life moves. Like,
it does.
During this period too, where it's like, damn, like we can't just do that anymore. We all have like these jobs we got to go to and responsibilities now.
Come on, it's Saturday night. No, it's Sunday, and I have to go to work tomorrow.
He doesn't know what day it is. And Ed is just like, it's one of those things where like, he's like, stay over one night. Like they don't say this, spell it out, but you can just tell it's like, why don't you stay over? And Ed just basically moves in. Like,
yeah, he just never left. Right.
Yeah. Which I love that too, because Peter mentions that too. Like he doesn't pick up ever, or he doesn't, can you write down people's voicemails, not just your own,
Right.
And I will give Ed credit. I was kind of paying attention. I'll ask this question to you too, where I was trying to think who is more irresponsible, Ed or Shaun? Because the easy answer is Ed, but I don't know. There's stuff that I was like, man, Shaun is really, he's not doing his part either. Because like all that stuff that Peter complains about, Ed does. He does write down the voicemails. He does pick up a little bit, and Shaun, he can't even make a dinner reservation.
Or get flowers.
He's the one that forgets to close the front door. I noticed this time, which I don't think I did before. You know what I mean? So I don't know. It's interesting to think about. They're both irresponsible in their own ways. I mean,
well, I think like that's the interesting thing about growing up too, and it like makes me think of the whole crux of the Banshees of Inisherin friendship thing, where it's like, as my friend, you have like slowed me down. It's like, well, I also have to take accountability for that, right? I think that's like part of when they confront each other towards the end, and he's like, I've been kind of, always apologizing for you all this time, but to your point, it's just made it easier for him to not take accountability in his own life, to be like, well, Ed's always worse than me, so I'm doing fine.
Yeah, Peter even says that. It must be easier having a bigger loser than you around, to make yourself feel better.
And I do think people do that. I think that's like a real thing people do in real life. Yeah.
100%. The popular girls keeping, their little lackey. I'm thinking like Mean Girls, you know what I mean? Yeah, like there's always the ones that aren't as pretty or popular, and I think that's definitely real.
And that's like the difference between like the juvenile characters in this and them trying to like embrace and be accountable and be assertive in their lives, because that's like what I love about Shaun's journey is that like he's incredibly passive, just letting things happen to him and to others, and by the end he is really like making a plan and driving towards something and trying to take charge.
Yeah, I thought what else made this like really fun to teach, because like I would have to watch it more than once, right? Which like could be good or bad depending on what movie. I tried to pick movies I would be okay doing that with.
Watching a bunch.
This one I felt like in all of Edgar Wright's movies, I feel like to an extent, like because the filmmaking is so precise and because the writing, especially in this one too, like if you pick up lines from the beginning, there's like so much foreshadowing. It's crazy.
Yes,
you know what I mean? Like
so good.
It's so good, and like double entendres and stuff like that. Like it's like early on, Ed, he's like would say like cock it, like fuck it, basically, and then at the end when they're shooting, when he's reloading the gun, he goes cock it.
Yes.
any like shit like that, where it's like, how did they think of this? Like, it's
I
just
love it.
genius.
And I love writing when like a character finishes another character's sentence, but not
They
contextually
always
in
do
the same
that.
way. I
Yeah.
love that because I feel like that's so clever. And again, how do
The
they do that?
whole,
You have to think so far ahead to
the
do
whole
that.
bit with like Philip, like, Mom, he's not my dad. And she's like, no, he is. And he goes, no, I mean, he was, but now
Right.
he's a zombie. Like, that is so layered, like that scene.
Yes.
But yeah, like, yeah, think of every, like, again, if you rewatch it, it's so fun because it's like every line where, Peter's like, if you love him so much, why don't you put Ed out in the shed or whatever? Cut to the end of the
Yes.
movie.
Yep.
Where Ed is there.
Yeah, none
And
of the lines are wasted, even though this is silly and kind of a bro comedy in so many ways.
yeah,
It's incredibly thoughtful.
it's so tight. And I guess the one that I don't think I realized too until I taught it is that if you notice, every person that says to Shaun, "You've got red on you," which is like just a funny, innocent joke because he spilled some red pen,
Yep.
in his shirt pocket. They all get turned into zombies, every single one.
Yeah.
I marked it down this time just to double check, but every single one. It's the teenage kid that works under him. You
Let's
see on the
go.
TV at the end. His
Yep.
mom mentions it. She turned into a zombie. Philip
Peter does. Mm-hmm.
Philip does, and Peter does. I think that's all of them. Yeah.
Yep.
But yeah, every single one. So it's like
Bill Nye does too. He also says you've got red on you.
right. Yeah. So yeah, plenty of it's so
Just
tight, like we're
thoughtful.
saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
And even like the repetition in like the different shots. Like I remember hearing that, because you get at the very beginning, which I love how it opens, where it's like Shaun is basically a zombie. Like the commentary is not subtle at all. He wakes
Yes.
up, he yawns, and like stumbles out of bed, and
Yep.
like I
And
love that shot of everyone in the street like walking in unison, like
yes.
like these worker bees and whatever. And he get that oneer where he goes to the
The
local
convenience
shop,
store.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
to get to get whatever coffee, that he had to fight to keep that in there because like obviously producers like wanted to cut like stuff, anything that's slow, and so on purpose he did the second one where like he doesn't realize the apocalypse has happened and he does the exact same shot again. And
Yes.
it's so,
Yes.
again, it's so funny because like you watch it enough times and you're like, okay, you're like waiting for things. Like I was like, all right, where's the kid with the soccer ball? And then you
Right.
just see the soccer ball off in the corner. You're like, where's the homeless guy? He trips on the curb in the same exact spot. It's like
Yes.
so funny. The door he opens has like the bloody handprints, which he doesn't notice. Like
Nope. He slips on something and he doesn't even check it.
it's asking you to, and I think that's what held up really well too, is it's like asking you to picture this world where people are so um deluded and like just with their jobs and just like working and capitalism and
Yeah,
like
they're stuck in a routine. They're not paying attention to the present.
yeah, is where it's like and like that's another bit I love where he's changing the channels as the zombie they're
Yes.
reporting on it. So he like there's one where it's like an animal, killing another animal. But it's making sense. Like the pieces, the audio bites are making sense
Yes.
together. Like again, I don't know how they thought of that, but that was so funny.
The best is at like the very end of the movie, they repeat this same thing where he's going through where they're like just about to tell you what caused the zombie apocalypse and he just changes the channel so we
Changes
never
it.
get to hear it.
Yeah, the closest thing they say is some like a meteorite or something crash like very early on in the beginning. There's like some astrological thing,
Connection.
and
Okay.
then they changed. I was trying to watch out for that too, but they never really.
No, they don't tell you. And it's like it doesn't matter to him, right? Like that's
Yeah.
I think that's what's interesting about this too, is that like he is just trying to survive. He's just trying to like fight for a
Mhm.
life, for an existence. And at the top of this movie, he takes existence for granted. That's why he doesn't notice any of these things.
And he takes his relationship for granted, like and that makes sense as a character, and like that's why you understand where Liz is coming from too. Where I love that line that she says too, where she says like, "It's not that what I want this, I want you to want
To
this."
want this.
You know, like,
And that's a very rom-com trope as well.
yeah, it is.
Yep.
And you see him do try like to get his mom flowers and things like that, but again, does he have to stay up with Ed till 4 in the morning, playing electro or whatever?
Exactly.
And constantly, is the Winchester the best place to go in these circumstances? Probably not,
Right.
but
yeah, he may not be the smartest guy, but I think this is not about him needing to be smarter. It's about him needing to be more present in his day to day, more present in his relationships, more present with what he wants out of life.
And like, yeah, some jokes have, are obviously 2000s, but I thought one of my best students, like, she came up to me afterwards and we kind of were just talking about it. And she was just like, I wasn't really offended at all, like about this stuff. Like, you in the context of the time, and like, she was just saying like, yeah, there's that homophobic, like, broy humor, but
Right.
then they also like play into it too, like that
Yes.
I'm thinking of that scene where, he's like, "Yeah, why don't you go with your boyfriend?" And then Ed's like, "I kept it code for you," or whatever, and he's like,
Yes.
"Thanks, babe."
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, it's sort of
So it's
like they're not ashamed of those things. So even though they exist, it's
Yeah.
not they don't buy into it.
And it's like Ed is the dumb one, so of course he's gonna be like, "Gay," and like, remember, like,
Right.
that was peak comedy in like 2004, was just
It really
calling
was.
everything gay,
It truly was.
So it makes sense the stoner character that doesn't know what's happening, would do that.
Right.
Yeah. Anything else? Yeah, I
I
think
mean,
we covered a
like we
lot.
talked about, right? I think this is just a great signifier of like Edgar Wright's style. I always am going on about how much I love inserts in all different kinds of ways, and I just love how quick and fast and fun the inserts are in this. The
Yeah,
sound
like the
design is
toilet
so
flush,
great.
the toilet, like,
Yes,
you know,
yes. That's why the sound design's
putting
so
on the
good
name
too.
tag, putting the name tag on, and yeah, it's solid.
Everything. Yeah, like the sound, the mixing of like, what it sounds like when that guy is like washing his car that he walks past who's not there. The music drops, like the
Mhm.
techno jam when everyone is zoned out on the bus, and then Queen's Don't Stop Me Now at the end. Like
Yeah.
just so
I love the
again,
white
really
lines thing they
thoughtful.
showed in the trailer too, where
Yes.
again, that's something you would totally do with your friend, like just drunkenly singing a song together. But
Yep.
then, there's this again. They think all these zombies are just drunk people, and so
Yes,
they're
which is
messing with
really
them.
funny too,
I
because
know.
like, like that's the issue too, is that like rather
Yeah.
than be present with like the seriousness of like there are drunks everywhere, it's
Yeah.
hilarious to them. So good.
Oh man.
And that's something that really stuck out to me too here is that like there's a lot of popular music in this movie, and it was made for so little. So like
Yeah.
they also really
They had
thought
to have
about how to spend
a
their
lot of
money.
their budget had to go. I mean, Queen. That's not gonna come cheap.
No
Like,
way. No way.
and
Yeah,
they
they
used
really
two
had to
Queen
think.
songs too, right? Like the one at the in the credits, I think,
Yes.
and then in the bar fight.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah, like they really had to think about what they were going to spend on, which I really appreciate. And I think my favorite takeaway from it, rewatching it this time, was how most of the jump scares have nothing to do with zombies. They're about like someone standing
yeah,
behind him or someone,
I love the
catching
one
him when
where
he's drifting off, something like, real life moments.
I love the one where his what's his stepdad's name? Philip? That's him, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Where like he's about to kill him and he's like, "I'm sorry, Philip," and he goes, "For what?" And it's
Yeah.
like the
What?
music drop.
Yeah.
Like that was a jump scare. I was like, "Damn, that was kind of freaky." I'm not gonna lie.
Exactly. I kind of
Uh,
love that because it's
yeah,
like what we're talking about, which is like this story is really about a dude who's like kind of afraid of embracing his real life. So
yeah.
zombies,
Real
that's
life
like
is
a
scarier because he steps up. Like
exactly.
we talked about this during Zombieland too, but like those two characters in that, it's like they're in the prime of like
Yes.
their talents in this zombie apocalypse.
That's right.
And it's like sometimes that's what it takes for some of these losers to get their life together. Maybe it would
To
take a
step
zombie
up and
apocalypse.
embrace it. Right. Right. Yeah, just such a smart thing to put into this type of story because this story does really have so much more than just, just one genre, just one through line, just one message to send. It's so good. So yeah, let's get into some of these performances with our next segment called Choose Your Fighter.
Welcome to the party, pal.
This is where we take a look at all the bros and babes that flex their acting muscles and sometimes the real muscles for us movie buffs. The film stars Simon Pegg, Nick Frost, and Kate Ashfield. What do you got, Shady B?
Not a lot of real muscles in this one, but that's okay. That's totally fine.
It's the story. These are average people.
That's what this is all about. I love Simon Pegg. I'm a huge Simon Pegg fan across the board. Like, I love when he joins the Mission franchise. He's one of my favorite people there. I love, all the compilation of films you're talking about, kind of in their trilogy. He's just such a unique kind of guy because he has these interesting stories to tell, but he also can play this everyman in such an authentic way. And I really, really appreciate that. And I love the chemistry that he and Nick Frost have together. Like, it's so clear that they really love each other, as friends, as people,
and they're
as collaborators.
in all of the entire Cornetto trilogy. They're all
exactly,
which I think is again speaks volumes. Like, they all wrote these together. They all you can feel that kind of kids on the playground approach to the filmmaking, which I really like.
Yes, I love that you put it that way too, because that is really there. And everybody in this is just really nailing kind of the archetype they could be just resting on and bringing that to something more serious. The stepdad thing with Bill Nighy, so good at they've really nailed that weird dynamic of an adult who's still you're not my dad. And an adult who's I'm trying to be a good dad, but I also don't know how because I don't have any children of my own.
It's you would think by 30 he would get over that, but he's still in that you're not my dad phase. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he's still a teen about it.
Yeah.
So good.
So I really like that, where his and I like how I love his mom. The actress that plays his mom is really
so
good.
Sweet. Mm-hmm.
Because he's definitely messing with her. How much do you love Philip, mom? But he touched
We've
me
been through this.
Yeah.
Yes.
And yeah, I think all the dramatic scenes, it's I feel in a lot of other parodies or whatever, it's kind of all right, we need to push the story along, or we need to have at least one or two of these, and they're actually good in this. It's kind of amazing. You can really tell that Simon Pegg was going to be the star of this this trilogy.
Was a real actor.
He's a good actor. The scene in the back of the car with Philip, where again, Bill Nighy too is great, a legendary actor. But when he's you were 12, I came in, you lost your dad. It was I just wanted to give you a role model or whatever. All this stuff you would want to hear your stepdad say, and then he starts crying. He tells Ed to pull over.
Yep.
And it's in the midst of all this action, so it can that can take away for some people, but I think he's great in that scene. And then
so good,
the one with the mom at the end too, where she turned into the zombie and he's crying in that scene too. It's those are not easy scenes to play as an actor.
No, and it's just so authentic. I feel he really is the emotional core of this story, because all zombie movies, I think, are about being you need to be self-reliant, and what that means for people in real life is you have to know how to survive and live without your parents, whether they're dead or not, but you have to be able to live on your own. And he is really facing that at the highest,
you just believe
stakes.
I like even how ridiculous that Mexican standoff is at the end with Ed, Philip.
Stupid Ed.
But
the other guy.
But when he's stop pointing that gun at my mom. It's
yes, don't point that at Barbara.
Yeah. You so believe it. This is a guy who's he's been put he's had the worst day, and he says it at one point too. It's I think killing my mom, my stepdad, and my girlfriend might be a little too much.
Yep. That's really where the limit is.
Nick Frost, I think great physical comedy. He nails it.
Yes.
He's got the Got Wood shirt on, and just
epic.
Again, just looking at him, it's kind of just funny and pathetic. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he's totally able to play a character like that without making him one note. With helping you understand, actually, this is a guy who's very confident in himself. He doesn't need to represent himself as other things to feel good about himself.
Yeah, he just again, and it's not out of any malice or anything. It's just one of those guys who's just he's in his own world, it's kind of
doing
childish, kind of. But when he's trying to play the arcade game, it's that's what he does when he goes to the Winchester. But he's just not thinking that we shouldn't do that. Or like when he gets the call on his cell phone, he has the whole conversation.
So good.
It's like, that was one thing I guess I was surprised about. Some of the students really did not like Ed. They thought because he was like getting them in trouble,
like kind of needlessly.
But I'm like, that's a character, that's like his character in the thing. Like,
yeah, he wasn't really afraid of anything, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, like, and I love that, he's again, he's not wrong about everything when he says like the gun over the Winchester. They keep telling him, Ed, come on, that's not going to be, that's not.
Yeah, it's got to be a prop, right?
And it works,
and he's a good shot with it.
Good shot. And yeah, I love that he reconciles that at the end too. They have that like moment, where it's like, not trying to embarrass you all the time, and you need to live your own life. Like, there's that kind of, again, it's like a love triangle kind of thing where it's like he has to litigate that with his best friend, but also his girlfriend, and there'll be some changes around here. And
we all have to grow up, and that's okay. Yeah. It's okay.
You don't have to change or anything. It's just going to be priorities basically changing.
Exactly.
And then yeah, Peter, the guy who plays Peter, is just like the most punchable face ever.
I hate that guy, dude. Yeah. He is the worst.
He's always complaining, and that's a character too. Like I was thinking they would hate that guy because you're supposed to hate that guy.
Yes, and I hate that guy.
Yeah, and he's just like, he's not. It's my least favorite type of person where it's like they're not contributing anything. They're just sitting back and complaining the whole time. Like.
Yep.
And everyone's aware that this is a bad situation, but then you want to be the guy that's like, oh, but why are we going to the Winchester? Yeah, it's like, oh, fuck you, and like, you get that kind of love thing too, where it's like maybe that's why he's being such a dick to Shaun, because he really likes Liz.
Yes.
Everyone kind of knows.
Even his girlfriend, who's great in this too. She's so funny.
I love. Yeah, I was gonna mention her too because I really love that scene with her when so I guess she's like an actor or something.
Yes.
So she's like trying to teach them how to act like zombies.
Yes. Ooh,
and
good
it's
voice
the
work.
most
Yeah.
it's the most actory like bullshit where it's like
epic.
It's kind of solemn, but like
lost in the eyes. Yeah. Sadness, a little drift. Yes,
with
and
a
like
whisper, like just out of like just saying some utter nonsense, and then
Ed being like, "I'll do it on the day." Like so many good.
Shaun's like, it is the day. What are you talking about? It is the day.
So good.
I love like my favorite one though is the mom, because she's like, Barbara, that was perfect, and she's like,
yes.
Just like lost at that point.
Exactly. She's authentically lost there, so it's coming through. Yeah, so funny. Like even the small characters here, it makes sense in the story. We need them. We needed her because we were going to need to walk through this crowd of people pretending to be them.
I listened to Amy Nicholson and Paul Scheer's episode. They just did a Shaun of the Dead episode maybe like last month or so, but
nice.
She really liked, which I was kind of surprised, but she really liked the Yvonne, I think her name is, who's like Shaun's like, how they all have their doppelganger. That's like Shaun's doppelganger.
Yes.
He really liked like her and was like,
she is really funny when she
wondering
shows
about
up.
like what their connection is. Like maybe they dated at some point, or maybe they're just friends. Like,
they were friends,
but that she has this kind of like control over the situation that Shaun really doesn't. Like Shaun's trying to be like her.
Yes.
Almost. Even though they're like counterparts.
And she does kind of save the day in the end. Like she does rescue them.
So yeah, I love that scene too, where it's, there's like 6 people and they're all meeting each other.
They're all the same.
Single file line.
Yes, it's so good. Their costume design all matches. It's so silly.
Ed and his one are just on their phone, not paying attention, like always texting,
Yep.
Oh man, let's talk about some of the action here, like you mentioned early on in our next segment called The Need.
Pain don't hurt.
In this segment, we'll do what the Oscars don't do and honor the amazing stuntmen and women for their death-defying work. We'll pick out the punch that knocked us out the most. All right, what are your top 3 stunts?
This is hard because like they're all kind of like, my favorite ones are the ones that are like gags, like humor.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
And there's like so many of those. It's hard to like narrow it down. I would say because it's such a small one, but because I also did a paper on Edgar Wright.
Nice.
in grad school about like how his filmmaking became like a signature throughout his films, not even just the Cornetto trilogy, but like, you know, cut editing to the music and things like that.
Yes.
But in the Cornetto trilogy specifically, I mentioned when Simon Pegg is like jumping over the fence, where they're like, "You mean it's right over those 10 fences?" Probably Peter said that, and he's
Yes.
like, "What? You're afraid of some, he's like so cocky, he's like sticking his tongue out, like, come on, nothing, and
Yeah.
then just like falls straight over the fence.
So good.
And they bring it back in every single Cornetto entry. So it's like it's such a gag that I don't know. I have to mention that one just for that.
Love it.
Speaking of like the music, I will say like the Queen beatdown in the bar is just like fantastic. I also mentioned that in the paper because I talked about Shaun of the Dead probably the most, just because it's like when we talk about auteur theory, it's like it was there from the start,
Yes.
like his signatures, like this is what he loves to do. And so like if you watch that scene back, and I did a presentation on it and showed it, and like they're beating him like on beat, where it's like they're in sequence, they're boom, 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 like with their pool sticks, and like even Peter like switching with the switches, like that's like some instrument, like maybe guitar is playing and he's like fiddling with the,
so good.
It's like, wow.
Yeah, it's all choreographed.
It's like so creative. Like what made you think of that to do that?
I love it.
And so, yeah, I love that one. And like, again, there's some great lines in that, where he's like, Peter, kill the Queen. What? The jukebox,
Yes.
I guess my number one though, just because it's like so stupid, and like was when they're the first two zombies that Ed and Shaun see, and they're just looking for shit to throw at them. They have no weapons whatsoever.
Yep.
And then he brings out the vinyl box, and they're like debating like which records are okay to get rid of.
Yes.
It's like, the Batman soundtrack, throw it, and Sade, and he's like, no, like, so I just love that one. And I guess on that Amy Nicholson one, they talked that he met Sade like years later, and she was cool with it, whatever.
Okay,
like,
I was gonna say shit.
So yeah, Sade,
Nice.
Queen, love Sade.
So yeah. Good. So, me too. Yes, there is a DJ that does amazing like mashups, and there's a Sade mashup that he did. I'll see if I can find it so I can post it, but it's so good. Like,
and it's just the fact like they set up that these two were like love music, like they do the White Lines thing, and then like when they're like DJing, they're like scratching the records, and he's like, it's not hip hop, it's electro,
Exactly. Yes. So good. The quirks of these people, you really believe them. Yeah, I definitely love when they have that laundry basket full of things, and they're also like barely ever hitting them. It's so
like the
good.
Zombieland thing where he's throwing the toilet paper at the chick in the apartment.
Exactly.
It's just like it's a funny zombie gag, because it's like when in doubt, like just you got to do what you got to do. Whatever's next to you,
whatever you have. Yeah. You've got to turn it into a weapon. But I do just love that scene too, because I love how much they think that girl is just drunk. Like, I love how they're like, she's so drunk, and they're like laughing so hard about it. And it's a good like kind of the stunt when she's trying to get all over him, and he's like, hey, just fuck off, and he has to push her away, and she like falls on the umbrella stand. Like, that's a great stunt too, because it's sort of like in a different movie, this guy is so passive that he accidentally murders someone, and it's another kind of comedy. But there's something really
just like
funny.
The fact too, that was one thing I talked about in the paper. Like he also has visual gags. So like the fact you see Shaun through the stomach hole, is like
exactly.
It's obviously done with like VFX. This is early like VFX to get, because they don't cut away when she lifts up from the.
It's the death becomes her.
Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, he just, again, I love his visual gags too. There's so many of them.
So good. So good. I love when they impale the guy with the tetherball stick when they're running through the backyards. That's a great one. Because then
first
he's like, he wakes
first
back
he tries
up again.
like the ball, and they're like, like they're they're like miming, like, no, do it this way.
Exactly. Yes. And I think the best one is when Ed finally is gonna get turned at the end because it just looks really gross. There's so much blood squirting.
He
It's just
does
a
get it
great
kind of gross compared to other
effect. Yeah,
people.
it's a great effect. Because it makes it so that you don't see the amazing resolution coming.
I would also say, just because it's not going to make it anywhere else, but like the cricket bat as a weapon, only this movie is I can
Pretty
think
good.
of. Again, it's a very unique thing that I love about this movie.
Yes, yes, yeah, yeah. Unique to the culture and everything too, but still, we
Hmm.
totally get it.
Yep.
Yes, awesome, awesome. All right, that's time for our next segment called Death Proof.
If he dies, he dies.
This is where we take a look at the movie's body count, see who bit the dust the hardest.
All right, my top 3, I love when they run over the old man
Oh
and then they
yeah,
wait to make sure he reanimates because they
yeah.
don't wanna feel bad for killing him, like, for real.
Like
So I
yeah,
love
he was
that.
already dead before they got there. Yeah,
Right. Yeah, they ran over a zombie, they didn't kill a guy. Like, that is really what's fun about this too, is that, like, these are not killers, right? They'll defend themselves, but these are not
yeah,
killers. I really appreciate that.
yep,
I like David at the end because he's just so annoying. It's, like, so rewarding when it's like, just
yeah,
tear him apart from the inside out. This dude has no guts, and so you're gonna rip his guts out and eat them, and I'm like, is
yeah,
perfect justice right there. So, so
yeah.
good. And then I think my favorite kill is when he has to kill Philip because it's such an emotional moment too. It's like not just a wasted cool kill per se. It's like a kill that, just like some of the other ones are played for comedy, is like the reality of death takes place during that kill. And it always sticks with me every time I revisit this movie.
Hmm.
What about you?
I'll say like yeah, I got Ed getting bitten too, like because I thought that was like one of the gnarlier ones, and like
And it's
a lot of
sad.
the people in the main group like got bit. They don't show it. I don't like
Right.
Philip's not shown. Peter's not shown. It's like it all happened the day before or whatever in another scene.
Right.
So like yeah, you finally see, and it's like no Ed, like it's like oh damn, he does get killed. He still makes it at the end. He's not technically, like, fully dead. He's
Right. He
still
survives.
but yeah, that was still pretty gnarly. Still manages to, like, get a fart off though in, like, his post-zombie
They
state.
retained their basic skills or
I
whatever, right? Their base
I love
instincts,
that
that's what it
that line
was.
where he's like, I'll stop doing them when you stop laughing."
Exactly, exactly.
It's their whole relationship, it's their whole friendship, basically. Um I like that when Shaun trying to be the hero just does not work. When he puts the fire on the bar, and you're like, that was a good decision, and then he's like, "Where's the bullets?" That's like on the bar.
Yep,
Uh,
left him up there. Whoops, whoops.
but then like there's like an old lady that you see at the beginning of the movie, and like she gets one in the head, with the and again that's another line before
Yes,
that
I was
where
just
he's
gonna
like,
say.
"Give me a break" or something, like, and
Yep, and
then
there comes the
he gets
break.
the break.
Yes.
So layered. Every joke is like so layered. And then yeah, it has to be David because it's the grossest one. Definitely the one that I noticed students recoiling at. Like maybe I should have gave them a trigger
It's
warning,
pretty
but
gross, yeah.
it's it's like definitely the most graphic death, and homage to Day of the Dead where they rip the biggest dick in that movie too in
Yep,
half and like watch his guts, pour out. Um,
satisfying.
but it looks super real. It looks really good. Like you see him like squirming and like writhing. It's like they really sell that kill really well. So,
They do, they do.
which takes us to our next segment called Exit Wounds.
Come on, don't bullshit me.
This is where we'll talk about the film's imperfections, if there are any, and decide whether they are fatal hits or just minor
Perfect
flesh
movie.
wounds.
Perfect movie.
Yes, yeah. What trips you up here?
I just noticed, I guess, this time that like because there's this whole thing where like David breaks the window because he's impatient to the
Mm-hmm.
Winchester, but like the zombies don't ever seem to like wander in, like or like you almost don't even notice that it's broken.
Right.
It's like it just kind of is like a non-factor. They don't talk about like they don't show them boarding it up or anything. So I thought that was like kind of one thing where they tried to like yada yada it, even
Totally.
though like it's like that's kind of a major window, like pretty
It
big
leaves them very
window.
vulnerable. Mm-hmm.
So that's the only thing I really noticed this time. What about you?
Yeah, I guess like I, was thinking more sort of about like there could have been a little bit more explaining as to why Sean's so apathetic about his relationship like his girlfriend is very pretty. She seems to be really cool and accepting of him and open to
because
him.
his
And he
true
seems
love is
to
Ed.
really
I'm
love
telling
her.
you, he's gay.
I mean, like maybe there's something to that too. But I also
think
agree.
he's just a man child. It's one of those. He's
Right.
like
He's just super.
non-committal. That's like a rom-com thing
Yeah.
too, right? Like
Yeah.
he
A
doesn't want
man
to
boy.
commit. Yeah.
Right. Totally. But yeah, I think I agree with you too. Like towards the end, it starts to get a little yada yada. Like deaths begin ramping up, where like they're just starting to happen now rather than happening over the course of a series of events. But that's totally okay with me.
I do like that
we had to wrap it up.
I really like that natural. Like Liz is not taking him back, but she really does have his side throughout the whole. You know what I mean? I really like that where she's not openly being like, "We're back together" all of a sudden, but like when David's like about to kill his mom, she's like, "What are you doing?" You know, and like
you're acting like a real idiot.
And like she steals the smokes that he threw away. I like that line, and she's like, "What makes you think I'd taken you back?" And he's like, "You don't want to die single, dude."
Totally, right?
There's still like some chemistry and like love there that like where she's like, maybe I was being a little hard on you, and Shaun's being like, well, I was kind of being, there's kind of like
in a way he has proven that he can step up through this experience.
The zombie shit, yeah, exactly. Which brings us to our last segment called Game Over Man.
What a picture!
Good picture, yeah.
That is so much fun. I love that stuff, the killing.
A lot of killing.
In our final segment, we will rate the film out of 5 vinyl records. All right, what do you give this film?
I'll go 4.5. I just think it's like so much fun. Maybe it's being biased because I taught it to my students.
Special
and like
place in your heart.
Yeah, having their reactions and stuff like that. But I mean, it was the fact that it holds up, that they loved it, and like that we taught a whole segment, talking about genre mashups and whether this is a zombie movie or a rom-com truly, it's like that stuff is just fun, and you wouldn't get that if this was just like your basic zombie movie. There's just like a lot here going underneath the surface, which speaks to Edgar Wright and everybody involved.
Absolutely.
What about you?
Yeah, for pretty much all of the same reasons, I'm gonna go 4 vinyls. Like this movie is nearly perfect. I think, with a little bit more maybe money, it could have been even better, but only because I trust that they could have done more with that money, not wasted it. But it is such a great rewatch. It's, one of the best mixed genre movies, and it's like such a great evolution of filmmaking where you can have all of these ideas and bring them together in a movie, and it can still, be sound in any of those genres independently at the same time. I love that we rewatched it, and it's going to stand the test of time, because I feel like any person who hasn't seen it, it like changes the way they look at all these types of movies when they do see it.
One of the best zombie movies ever, and if like you need any proof of it, George Romero, who's like the god of zombie movies,
right,
loved it. He thought it was great. He told Edgar Wright and all of them that he loved it, and
epic.
This is it's a love letter to his movies. So
that's
there
right.
you go. You got the king's approval,
and that's all we're after anyway.
So yeah, that wraps it up for us. Let's remind people where they can find us.
All right, get your fix and follow the show at We Stay Buff on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, and on Twitch at The Buffs. And you can follow me on all the socials at It's Me, Shani B.
Take us for a ride and subscribe to the podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Please leave a positive review. 5 stars, 5 stars, 5 stars. Follow me on all the socials at Misfit_Minded and my website, misfitminded.com.
Next week, we'll be covering The Terminator. That wasn't a great accent, but I tried.
Get ready for Arnold next week.
Yes, I'll work on it. I'll do some work. I'll be ready. All right. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you next time for another edition of Movie Buffs. Until then.
I'll stop doing them when you stop laughing.